All right, thank you once again for joining us today at Eastern News 24. I should know to Oma, Fioma, Mbodema, Sister Nebis, where no bossing get on Eastern News 24. I see Kankoye Chile, Yazelo. I snanny boy Adema, any boy Adikechi, nature that wago, or try Purotaco Yadiri. Ise. If I would tell you no need wapo yabo ifena dana botu no bodano ni mea ne na moro wendi bona zo elu nanya onyo na funi wapo Aloy Ejiofor, the lead counsel of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Yabo interview session with Rise News gente kilifo welepu dika ine Mazi Nnamdi Kanu ya bịa court na ya bụ ọnwa nke anyị na-abanye bụ September 14th. Gee ntị ka ịnụ ihe Aloy Ejiofor were ekwu gbasara maka ọnọdụ ka Maazị Nnamdi Kanu si wee nọrọ and gbasara maka ya bụ ikpe nke na-aganụ. All right, over to you.
The court order that Nnamdi Kanu has been discharged. You obey the order first before you can bring up any new charges. But when you do that, in the unique circumstances of Nnamdi Kanu, there's a problem. Nnamdi Kanu is in Nigeria through a process that breached the law. So what is the fix?
Well, joining us now in the studio is Aloy Ejiofor, one of Nnamdi Kanu's counsel. Thank you so much for joining us on the news tonight.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, you just listened to the Minister of Police Affairs, Mohammed Dingyadi, after the National Security Council meeting today. They seem to be backing the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice stance that, one, your client was discharged and not acquitted. How do you respond? And what's the difference between a discharge and an acquittal?
Well, first of all, we have to have factual clarity about what the essence of the ruling yesterday. I believe the Attorney General came out too quickly to interpret, and he ended up misinterpreting the tenor and the reach and the true meaning of the judgment. And he ended up playing what I would term semantic games. There's really no difference between discharge and acquitted. It's a very thin line. If somebody is discharged, he really doesn't have to be acquitted. It's a word of art when lawyers say or judges say you're discharged and acquitted. So they really don't have to say the acquitted part. If you don't have any charges standing against you, what are you doing in detention? It's very simple. You don't have to be a lawyer to figure that out. So I think what is playing out here is an extension or escalation of the same executive rascality, recklessness, lawlessness that led to the extraordinary rendition in the first place. Otherwise, a well-ordered society, a responsible government is supposed to respond within the framework of the law. If the Attorney General is talking about taking the matter to appeal to the Supreme Court of Nigeria, I probably won't be sitting here because it's a non-issue. The Attorney General has the right to say that. The federal government has the right of appeal. But they are not talking about that. They are talking about their right to disobey court order.
Is that really what they're saying? Or they are saying that the pre-rendition, there were charges against Nnamdi Kanu,
yes,
including the fact that he's a flight risk because he jumped bail, having been given or granted bail. Are you saying that he doesn't have any more questions to answer?
No, see, listen, this notion of Nnamdi Kanu jumping bail is straining the boundaries of defamation of character. He didn't jump bail.
Okay.
I personally secured a judgment on January 19th this year from High Court of Umuahia that obliterated that notion completely, because the event that compelled his departure from Nigeria was too compelling. It was not volitional. So he had to depart Nigeria in search of a safe haven and to save his life. And the ruling of the High Court of Abia State made it very clear, crystal clear, that his fundamental rights were violated by the attack that was levied at his home in September 2017. So with that sort of judgment, the idea or notion that he jumped bail should be discussed at all. Now, talking about pre-rendition offenses, before you can try anybody for any offense, whether pre-rendition or post-rendition, you have to create the legal environment for transferring a fugitive from one country to the other. And the proper legal environment is called extradition. The absence of extradition has created a permanent barrier to the prosecution of Nnamdi Kanu, and there is no way around it. The federal government committed egregious violation of international laws and treaties and laws of Kenya and laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in engaging in that conduct that he did on June 19 last year. So there is no more question of pre-rendition, and the pre-rendition offenses you are talking about have been voluntarily withdrawn by the federal government. They were actually for treason, conspiracy to commit treason, defamation of the character of the president, and 4, illegal importation of radio equipment. 3 of those were voluntarily dropped by the federal government. They left in place only the illegal importation and padded it up with 15 counts of terrorism offenses. And the court dismissed some of them and left the other one. Now the appeal court has dismissed or struck out the rest of them. So if you don't have any charges pending against somebody and holding him in jail, you're either persecuting him or you engage in an impermissible conduct that the Supreme Court calls holding charge, and it is unconstitutional.
So help us understand this, because you said, you know, it's not compulsory that the court uses the word acquittal. But is it not true that if a trial has not taken place, then you cannot talk about an acquittal? In this case, would you say a trial has taken place?
No.
If a trial hasn't taken place, then there can't be an acquittal. So he hasn't been acquitted.
No,
Isn't that
no trial has to take place for you to be discharged of criminal charges.
To be acquitted.
To be discharged.
No, he has been discharged.
The
argument is over him being acquitted or
Well,
not.
I already told you at the beginning.
And that's what I'm saying, to clarify that as a lawyer, would you say a trial has taken place? If no, do you not say that an acquittal is possible only when a trial takes place?
No, it's not correct. You are importing into what the Attorney General said what he didn't say. He didn't say that a trial has taken place.
All right, tupu aya ganelu igosi ni yabi fendo zo follow for Aloy Ejiofor ku ni akwụkwọ ọbụna nke abụbọsị izigi na esore na Eastern News 24 kabaru ki subscribe network ebe ese bell turn on your notification on so that kira pin miss any of our updates dita ile with here. All right, let's continue with the discussion.
Of course, it's a standard fact known to everybody that no trial took place. It's also a fact in law that you can be discharged and acquitted without trial taking place. Attorney General knows that. He's just playing games with the public, mind of the public, and it's unfortunate. I don't think this ought to happen. But if you leave the legalities aside, this is the sort of thing that stokes political tensions in society, and it can trigger a nasty diplomatic brawl with Britain. You forget Nnamdi Kanu has a second nationality of United Kingdom, and this kind of gives you a deja vu back to 1984 when Nigeria attempted to rendition Omar Idiko, and it led to countervailing consequences. 4 persons were convicted and jailed in UK. The Nigerian aircraft that was going to be used in the interdiction and rendition was itself interdicted in Britain and seized. And Britain broke up diplomatic relations with Nigeria for 2 years, and so on and so forth. And here we are again, several decades later, in a democracy, engaging in conduct that exposes Nigeria to diplomatic sanctions.
Right.
It shouldn't stand.
Okay, so now, what exactly does this discharge of Nnamdi Kanu by the appeal court, what does it really mean?
What it means
for the whole agitation for the Southeast?
Okay.
Does it mean that Nnamdi Kanu, in the event that he's actually granted bail or allowed, to go,
this is more than
will
bail.
it put an end to agitations for Biafra?
This is more than bail. Bail can come with conditions. If you're granted bail, you are still a ward of court. You may be required to report to police station, report to court, confined in a certain geographical area, but this is a discharge. A discharge means you're as free as any one of us sitting here. No hindrance of any sort should be placed on you, including your ability to travel within the territory of Nigeria and outside of it. Okay. So there is no condition at all. And what it portends for the for the agitation for Biafra is what you're asking about.
Right.
Well, let's come to that. Since when did self-determination become a criminal offense? I don't think the Court of Appeal would have taken the action he took if he considered it for one moment that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu committed any offense whatsoever, and not of the heinous types that the federal government is accusing him of. Why are we prioritizing punishment, suppression of an enterprise, an activity called self-determination that is protected under the laws of Federal Republic Nigeria? You can check it out. You don't have to take my word for it. Article 20, African Charter on Human and People's Rights, passed by the National Assembly in 1983, protected self-determination for all people. As a government, you can say no, but by all means, you shouldn't punish it. You shouldn't penalize it. Even if it is inconvenient to the government, you should consider it a political opinion, and you should not try to suppress it by means of punishment of some sort.
Right. There are calls for a political solution.
Yeah.
Some Southeast leaders are also saying that, look, if with this ruling or judgment from the appeal court, it will bring back some level of peace to the Southeast. And my question is, what will that political solution look like?
First of all, let me commend everybody that has made a statement tending towards that direction of restoring peace and security in Southeast. That is a very responsible statement to make, and I would call it on the federal government to look seriously into statements like that. So now, talking about political solution, agitation for a separate state is a political question. It's not a legal question. It's not. You can never win sovereignty for a new nation in a court of law, but you can win it across the table of political negotiation. So when someone rises and says, I want out, I want a separate state, he's actually calling you to the table. Because if he can obtain a separate state by the snap of the finger, he doesn't need to talk about it. He'll snap his fingers and the separate state will be thus created. But when somebody says, I want a separate state and I want to get it through the means of referendum, he's actually calling you to the table. So what is preventing the federal government from coming to the table to discuss this political question of separatism or a separate state for Biafra?
And that brings me to my question, because you did earlier say that, if the government continues to hold your client, then it smacks of persecution.
Yes.
What do you think, if you could hazard a guess, what do you think the government is worried about or is concerned about? Should your client be released? And I also want to ask you, what is the mood of your client, especially after this decision reached by the appeal court yesterday? Did you speak to him?
Yes, I did. I know, not after, not post-judgment, before. I was the only counsel that met with him yesterday. Others, deployed themselves to court. So I was with him till almost 5 p.m. at DSS, waiting to see whether we can get news of the judgment, so I could be the first to give him post-judgment legal advice. But it didn't happen, so he dismissed me. I went home. I'm sure wherever he is now, he's happy, and he's expecting that the government will do the right thing by opening the gates of DSS and permitting him to go home. So, but that is a supposition. Okay? The other part of your question is what I missed.
What do you think is the concern of the government?
Okay. I touched on this issue briefly. It's very concerning and a bit puzzling that the government of the day should prioritize those agitating for self-determination as the number one enemy of state. They shouldn't be at all, not even number one. The number one should be terrorism. The government should be asked that question. Why are you prioritizing agitation for a separate state over terrorism? I mean, you're here permitting, we heard that today the National Security Council met over this matter. Is the National Security Council the Supreme Court? Why should the National Security Council consider itself to sit in judgment over the judgment of a properly constituted constitutional court in the land? So these are the things that are more worrisome to me. Why this priority? Why this undue attention? And that is being removed away from the number one things that are dogging the society. Number one is terrorism. And the other day, you had a jailbreak at Kuje, and National Security Council did meet over it. Tens of Boko Haram people were released into society by their own hands.
Well, they did meet over it. I must point that out. They did meet
I stand
that
corrected.
and many security issues afterwards.
Well, I stand corrected, but you see, the reason that I probably might have missed it because this government has shown a proclivity not to take terrorism, fighting terrorism seriously. They have shown an inclination to be targeting people that are agitating for a separate state, and it's very puzzling. I'm as puzzled as you are.
You have made a great point on that already. Now, is the difference? Let's go back to the issue of the difference between an acquittal and a discharge. In the case of an acquittal, right, you cannot be recharged, but when discharged, you can be rearraigned. So it's not a closed book yet. That's what it means on this Nnamdi Kanu case.
Okay, let me give you an example. If I walk out of here right now, this is a jail, the detention center, I walk out on a discharge. It doesn't give me immunity from further prosecution, but I have to be allowed to walk out first. The court order that Nnamdi Kanu has been discharged. You obey the order first before you can bring up any new charges. But when you do that, in the unique circumstances of Nnamdi Kanu, there's a problem. Nnamdi Kanu is in Nigeria through a process that breached the law. So what is the fix? I can't tell you everything. I'm not here to give legal advice to the federal government.
What's your
but there's a fix. One of them is to obey the order first before you talk of bringing up new charges. You have to obey the order by releasing him. If you hold him absent of charges, you have violated the constitution and you have turned the prosecution to persecution.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Aloy Ejiofor on Nnamdi Kanu's appeal court, of course, one of Nnamdi Kanu's counsels. Thank you so much for joining us.
And by Guadaluri Nenu Kunusi, where Noya Beef, the lawyer to Mazin Nnamdi Kanu Aloy Ejiofor for Kawana Rights News. Ono no gasi for Kawadi teacher. Kefu wuri kuma odin kege basta maka ya beef. Achi meki mara ni yabu Eastern News 24 kasi na uteru yabu nukuozi. Dika isi kunu kwa nagane uteru daily update ni ruwa kuko basta maka yena emela obodano nimia andu ngoro wendibo na azo kefu wuri kiku basta maka ya beef ndi no ruwa kuko. Drop it on the comment section below. Kaifu ifi chelo. Asi no ya dra ni Igbo na mma. Aya dere Biafra na mma. Aya dike Chineke ada agwụ agwụ. Otu anyị kwuru otu akọ ya dịrịrị. Ise.